Good evening. I'm Mr. Morris, as you can tell, and I'm here to do my very first, I don't know what you call it, webcast or video or whatever it is, about the U.S. electoral system, the voting rules that we use in this country, and their effect on basically third parties. The homework that I'm assuming you've done and tried, and you're only going to this video because you got stuck somewhere or didn't understand something, I'm assuming you've done this. The homework is titled The U.S. Electoral System, How It Promotes the Two-Party System by Discouraging Third or Minor Parties. The first aspect of the U.S. electoral system is what we call the plurality rule or the plurality system. The word plurality means more than everyone else, the most. And in this country, we declare the winner of an election to be the person who gets simply more votes than everybody else. You might think, well, doesn't he have to have a majority? No. In most U.S. elections, a majority is not required. You simply have to have more votes than everyone else. That's called a plurality. Well, what's the big deal? Well, it is kind of a big deal because of its effect on third parties. In the homework, I give you a kind of a pretend election there. Here's a bigger version of it. So, in this pretend election, the candidate for Party A got 45%, Party B 42%, candidate for Party C 85%. Here's the difference. Under the plurality system, which is used in most U.S. elections, this candidate is the winner. End of story. The election's over. The other guys go home and say, hey, we'll try it next time. Except for these two, because they're not even close. They don't have a chance. So they might try for 2 or 3 elections, but eventually they realize they're never going to win. So they stop trying. The second place party at least gets close, so he'll try again in the next election. But the important thing is the minor parties are discouraged from competing because they'll never be one of the top 2. They'll never come close to 50%. They'll never get a plurality. Well, okay, is there any other system that would be different? Yes, it's called the majority runoff system, where you have to have a majority to win. In this election, no one had a majority. So there has to be a second runoff election among the top 2 parties. Now, when I just said the top 2 parties, you might still think, well, that still excludes the other 2 parties, but look more closely. Neither of the top 2 parties has 50%. That's why there's a runoff election. Where are they going to get the votes to win the next election with 50% or more? They're going to have to appeal to these voters. How are they going to do that? Well, the leaders of this party and this party are going to go talk to the leaders of these 2 smaller parties and cut a deal. That means these 2 parties, even though they don't have a chance of winning, they do have a chance of gaining some sort of influence, some sort of power, depending on what deal they can cut. This candidate might go to this candidate and say, hey, I'll make you my secretary of whatever, or I'll put you in charge of something that you really care about, or we'll promise to pass a couple of the bills that your party really wants to be passed. Whatever the deal is, these 2 parties can still get something out of the government, some sort of power, some sort of share of the power, even though their support is quite small. That's using the majority runoff system. Under the plurality system, remember, this guy wins and everybody else goes home. It's over. with the majority runoff system, the other parties at least have a chance of power, depending on how the election goes, because their votes might be needed and they can kind of cut some deal with the major two parties and get some share of power. So, answer to question number 4. Ultimately, what is the effect of the U.S.'s plurality system on third parties compared to the majority runoff system? Your answer should be something along the lines of the plurality system discourages third parties from competing and trying because they don't have a chance of winning. It promotes the two-party system by discouraging third parties compared to the majority runoff system, which would at least sometimes reward third parties with some share of power. The next section in the homework is about how we specifically fill up our legislatures in this country. First of all, there's the House of Representatives in Congress, and then there's all the state legislatures. How do we elect people into those legislatures? Well, we do it with something called the single member district system. We divide our states up into districts, and then we elect one representative from each district. That is similar, it has a similar effect on third parties to the plurality system, as you will soon see. So I made up a state called Mississippi. Sounds like a nice place to live, doesn't it? And in this, it's a very rectangular state, so this is it basically. And we've divided it up into 10 districts, because that's how many representatives Mississippi gets. And then this is the election results in each district. So, using the plurality system, who wins in that district? Democrat. In that district, the Democrat. In that district, the Republican. Democrat, 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 Republican, Democrat, Republican, Republican. Remember, the plurality system is, as long as you get more votes than somebody else, the election's over, top guy wins. Notice that the Green Party will never win any of these seats in the legislature. There will never be a Green Party representative in the House. It's always going to be either a Democrat or a Republican. And it's that way for all 10 districts. So all 10 districts are either going to be Republican or Democrat, no Green Party. Is there another way to do it? Yes, it's called proportional voting. You don't chop your states up into 10 districts, you just have a big statewide election. Everybody in the whole state votes as if it's one gigantic district that gets 10 representatives. And then, whatever their vote is, whatever the election results are, that's the percentages you use to divide up the seats. So, the Democratic Party, and remember you vote, in this scenario you vote for a party, not a candidate. So the Democrats would get 46% of 10, or 5 representatives. The Republican Party would get 44% of 10, or 4 representatives, and the Green Party would get 10% of 10, which is 1. Now you're still saying probably to yourself, but the Green Party only gets one guy. Well, that's better than nothing. There's a big difference between nothing and something. So in the single-member district system, where we chop our states up into districts and then use the plurality system to decide who wins each election, that discourages third parties because they're never going to win anything. If we didn't use districts and we just used proportional voting, then at least in some cases the third parties would actually win a seat in the legislature and would actually have some power, and that would encourage them to try and compete in our elections. So, what's the final result here? Question number 6. What is the effect of single-member districts on third parties compared to proportional voting? Single-member districts discourage third parties from competing, helps promote and maintain the two-party system, compared to proportional voting, which would at least reward third parties occasionally with seats in our legislatures. Last section of the homework. In presidential elections, there's something called the winner-take-all rule. We've already seen that in Republican primaries. Winner-take-all rule. Well, the winner-take-all rule is used in 48 of the 50 states in presidential elections. Remember, the presidential election isn't one gigantic nationwide election. It's actually 51 separate elections, 50 states plus DC. And the deal here is that in 48 of those states, the winner-take-all rule decides what the winner wins. The plurality system decides who wins. And what does the plurality system do to third parties? It discourages them from winning, or trying, because they never win. And the winner-take-all rule says, well, whoever does win, whoever does get the plurality in each state, gets how many of that state's electoral votes? Winner takes all. The winner gets all the votes. The loser gets none. So what's the effect of third parties of the winner-take-all rule in presidential elections? It discourages them from competing, discourages them from trying, because they never are going to have anywhere near 40-something or 50-something%. I mean, the winner-take-all rule even discourages second parties from trying. We'll talk about that later. Its effect on third parties is even more clear. It discourages them from trying because they really don't have a chance of winning. So, the last question, number 9. So, for the 47,000th time, I might be exaggerating, what is the effect of U.S. election rules on the the U.S. electoral system on third parties? Or put another way, what is a major reason we have a two-party system? Well, add it all up. The plurality system plus the single-member district system plus the winner-take-all rule help that are used in basically all U.S. elections in general, legislature elections, and the presidential election. Those rules all together have the effect of freezing out or discouraging third parties from winning because they never win, helps promote and maintain the two-party system by making sure that it's always going to be one of those two, the top two parties, that always wins. If it still doesn't make any sense after doing the homework and listening to this video, watch the video again, and then watch the video again, and then watch the video again. Then you can come see me, I guess, at school. Anyway, I hope that helps. Have a nice evening.